Today is Wednesday, January 14th, and Todd, Bittorf, and I are reflecting on yesterday's site visit from January 13th. We had visitors from Morgan Park Academy in Chicago and Otus, a vendor from a mobile learning environment, local vendor. We visited Hiawatha Elementary School and Heritage Middle School during yesterday's visit. So every group on our site visits, Todd, that come through is just a little bit different or at a different level. What were the visitors from yesterday's group most curious about while they were here?
Well, I would say that because they're not a one-to-one site at this point, one of the biggest questions or repeated questions was implementation. How do you pull something like this off, which is so huge? We're talking 5,000 devices spread across 8 different schools, and they wanted to know how do we train staff, how do we prepare them, how do we look after the equipment, how do we manage it. There were multiple questions about the expanse of such an undertaking.
Definitely, definitely. And I think it was so great, the questions that they were asking, because almost everybody here was teachers from that group, but they were like on this technology team helping, trying to move forward in this one-to-one direction. So they were really good management questions. That kind of brings us to, like, what were the visitors so excited to see when they were walking around? And I think many times that people come through our doors, it's the first time they've ever seen one-to-one in action, if they haven't been here or on another visit prior to that. And so this group of teachers, they're not a Google Apps for Education school. And so when they were walking around, just seeing some of the basic Google being shared on a Google Doc used as word of the week and story of the weeks that were shared with their teacher, just basic things, writing in a Google Doc that seems so second nature to us, they just wanted to see and learn more and more about. And then we got into, like, oh, how's all that managed? And then we see in another classroom that these teachers are in Google Classroom, and then in some other classrooms you see Blend Space that kind of ties in with our Google app. So I think the visitors on this group were just really excited about all the Google app stuff that was going on, and of course as well as all the level of student engagement. So per usual, we are going to move on to our shout outs. So we would like to give some shout outs both from Hiawatha and from Heritage. So Todd, who are your shout outs this week?
Well, Shannon, for me, a no-brainer is quite simple. Off of our agenda, outside of our agenda, I took an art teacher from Morgan Park into Andrea Siegler's classroom. Out of the blue, 2 visitors just showed up and arrived, and she was right in the midst of a very powerful smartboard lesson where notebook software was her foundation in order to teach her second grade art students about space. And she had multiple slides, and Pat was fascinated at the opportunity provided to Andrea for her instructional efforts. It was fantastic. And
that's great.
She wasn't even on the agenda. It was really cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thanks, Andrea. What about over at Heritage?
Well, at Heritage, it's a little closer to my heart in that I was fortunate to bring guests into Allison Mondrak's classroom. We're working with augmented reality and using the DAQRI app.
Thank you, Brad and Drew Braid.
And the kids were working with inside of a unit all about living and non-living things. So basically they were going to different targets throughout the room and explaining to our guests how they could target an object or focus in on an object with the iPads, and then the information required in order for them to complete the assignment all of a sudden appeared on their screen, and they could go ahead and finish everything that they were asked to do. It was wonderful, and my hats off to Allison Mondrack. She's just fantastic.
Way to go, working with that daiquiri studio. My shout outs over at Hiawatha goes to Ginny Burdett. Ginny is a first year teacher here in Berwyn South School District, and she teaches 4th grade. And when we were walking down the hall, before I could even get into Ginny's classroom, I knew what was going on. I could tell that they were in math, because there were kids lined up in the hallway. They were like laptops on their lap. Kids were like spilling over into the principal's office, because Ginny has a pretty small classroom, and then all these kids were recording, so they just took over that whole wing. So I'm walking over, and I'm getting ready to go like lean down and ask a kid what they were working on, and I quickly stopped because he was in the middle of recording himself. So they had photo booth open, and they were recording themselves talking and explaining through on their math problems. In the meantime, I'm kind of walking in the classroom, and other kids are within a blend space. And so what Ginny had done, and she put these videos all together in blend space, and the kids were going in and watching all of these different videos and these explanations in math. So, I mean, totally above the line. I just love that video recording piece. So way to go, Ginny, first year teacher. My shout out over at Heritage goes to Meg Navolio. Meg is a little bit more of a veteran teacher, and she's been involved in one-to-one kind of since the get-go. But what was going on in Meg's room is the level of differentiation. She had a group that was sitting, a small group center focused. Like, she had a group that she was working with on dry erase boards, and then another group was working on a discovery probe, and another group of kids were working like in IXL. And the elementary teachers that are listening, you're very used to that. You kind of see that at all 6 of our elementary buildings on a daily basis. But it's a little bit different over at the middle school. At the middle school, you see more kind of lecture focused, or just kind of students all doing the same thing at the same time. So props to you, Meg, for doing some major differentiation in your classroom.
At the end of every site visit session, we have a debriefing, and so we'd just like to say thank you to our attendees from Hiawatha and Heritage. We had assistant principal from Heritage, Allison Timpe, Bill Davini, assistant principal at Hiawatha, and then, as Shannon mentioned, Meg Navolio and Ginny Burdett were able to come and join us as well, and they were wonderful contributors to our discussion.
I want to do one last thank you, Todd, to Sam Spitz, who works for Otus. He was out giving us a demo last week at our Institute Day, and then just asked if he can come back on a visit because he wanted to learn more about us and more about our students and just see one-to-one in action. So as always, we'll end with our evaluation quotes, and Todd and I picked our favorite quote, and here it is. Thank you for sharing your generosity in sharing your classrooms with us. The teachers and admins are all so outgoing and eager to answer questions. Loved that you encouraged us to talk to students. They were very articulate and generous too. Great leadership here. So that's all for today. We'll see you at the next site visit.
Thank you.